What if I told you that a modern person, finding themselves in a winter forest at night without equipment, is doomed to die within the first 3 hours? Imagine absolute darkness, piercing cold, no fire, no knife, and even no hope of rescue from outside. In a situation where the civilized mind sees only a deadly threat, the indigenous peoples of North America saw their familiar habitat. They entered the cold night empty-handed, but emerged alive, using knowledge passed down from generation to generation. Their secret was not to fight nature, but to deeply understand how to become part of it. Watch the video to the end to learn how ancient breathing techniques and knowledge of physics allowed them to keep warm even in the bitter cold without a single match. Are you ready to learn the truth about what kills a person in the wild faster than the cold? The main enemy of a lone traveler in a night forest has always been not the low temperature, but their own panic. When a person realizes that they are alone in the dark, their body releases adrenaline into the bloodstream, causing the heart to beat faster. This accelerated heartbeat leads to rapid, shallow breathing and chaotic movements that burn precious calories. The Indians of the Great Plains and Eastern Woods learned from childhood to control this first, most dangerous impulse of fear. They knew that unnecessary movement in the cold meant a loss of energy that could not be replenished. Instead of running or fussing, an experienced warrior or hunter would instantly freeze, turning into a statue. This ability to remain completely still was not just a military trick, but a basic survival skill. At that moment, their consciousness completely shifted from victim of circumstances mode to observer mode. The person began to listen to the forest, assessing the situation not with their eyes, which are useless in the dark, but with their ears and skin. Calmness allowed them to slow down their metabolism and retain internal heat in the center of their body. It was a kind of meditation, but aimed at preserving physical life rather than spiritual enlightenment. Breathing played a key role in this system of thermoregulation and psychological control. The Indians breathed exclusively through their noses, as this allowed them to warm the cold air before it entered their lungs. Slow, deep inhalation helped oxygenate the blood without the excessive heat loss that is inevitable when breathing through the mouth. Exhalation was even slower in order to keep warm air inside the body for as long as possible. This breathing rhythm calmed the nervous system, suppressing natural tremors and the urge to panic. Control over the mind allowed them to soberly assess their meager resources, even if they were only their own hands and clothes. Panic makes a person sweat, and sweat in the cold is a sure death sentence, as wet clothes lose their insulating properties. Native Americans knew how to suppress this stress through willpower, remaining dry and composed. They perceived the night not as an enemy, but as a temporary condition that simply had to be waited out. This attitude toward nature as a home, albeit a harsh one, changed all the rules of the game. We are very interested in hearing your point of view. What do you think about this kind of psychological preparation? Could it help modern people in critical situations? Write about it in the comments. And be sure to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss the next episodes on survival. Want to know a secret that will change your life if you suddenly find yourself in the woods? Choosing a place to spend the night is a strategic decision that must be made before it gets completely dark and cold. You can't just fall under the first tree you come across, as it could cost you your life. Native Americans understood the laws of air movement perfectly well, even without any knowledge of modern meteorology. They knew that cold air is heavier than warm air and always flows downwards, accumulating in lowlands and ravines. Therefore, spending the night at the bottom of a canyon or in a deep hollow was a sure way to freeze. An experienced tracker always looked for a higher place, but not at the very top of the hill, where the wind blows. The ideal spot was the so-called military middle of the slope, where the air temperature is often several degrees higher than below. In addition, Slopes facing south or east received more solar heat during the day and gave it back at night. Rocks and cliffs on such slopes acted as natural heat accumulators. Another important factor was the presence of natural windbreaks. The Indians looked for thickets of bushes, fallen trees, or piles of stones. Even a dense wall of tall grass on the prairies could serve as excellent protection if positioned correctly. In wooded areas, the Iroquois and Algonquins preferred to stop under the dense canopy of coniferous trees. The branches of spruce and pine trees not only blocked the wind, but also created a kind of roof that reflected some of the heat back to the ground. They carefully examined the ground, choosing dry areas, as moisture draws heat from the body 20 times faster than air. Moss, although it seems soft, is often saturated with water like a sponge, so it was avoided. Preference was given to areas covered with a thick layer of dry pine needles, or last year's leaves. This was a ready-made natural bedding that insulated the body from the frozen ground. They also avoided places under old and dry trees that could collapse in a gust of wind. Safety while sleeping was as important as warmth, because a wounded person alone would not survive. Their attention to detail was phenomenal. They noticed where birds and animals hid and often used their choices as a guide. Animals instinctively find the warmest and most sheltered places in the forest. And here's where it gets interesting. How do you turn a pile of rubbish into the warmest blanket in the world? In the next chapter, you'll learn how nature itself provides the perfect insulation. Guess how long it took to create this, with only forest debris at hand? We are talking about the creation of the so-called debris hut, or thermal cocoon, which saved the lives of thousands of hunters. The concept was ingeniously simple and was borrowed from squirrels and other small animals. The idea was to create a huge pile of dry leaves, grass, twigs, and pine needles, inside which an air layer was created. It was the air trapped between the layers of vegetation that was the best insulator known to man. When an Indian did not have a knife to cut branches for the frame, he used fallen trunks or low-hanging branches. He raked huge piles of dry leaves under them, creating a nest-like structure. It was important not just to throw the leaves on top, but to fluff them up so that they did not settle and retain their volume. The walls of such a shelter had to be at least as thick as an adult's arm. Only such a layer could reliably insulate from the outside cold. The hunter would literally burrow into this pile like a mole, leaving only a small opening for his face. Dry leaves worked no worse than modern synthetic insulation or down. The heat emitted by the body did not escape into the atmosphere, but was retained in thousands of tiny air pockets. The temperature inside such a cocoon could be tens of degrees higher than outside. Dry cattail grass, which could be found on the banks of water bodies, was especially prized. Its fluff has phenomenal thermal insulation properties comparable to goose down. The Indians stuffed their clothes with this fluff if they were too light, or used it to make soft bedding. Even dry ferns or moss, if it was completely dry, were used. The main rule was to insulate oneself from the ground, which is an endless heat absorber. First, a thick mattress was made of branches and pine branches, and only then were leaves piled on top of it. If you lie directly on the ground, no cocoon on top will save you from hypothermia from below. This knowledge was written at the cost of many lives and mistakes. Such a shelter was cramped, dark, and smelled of rotten leaves, but it was warm. A person was in a kind of capsule, warmed by their own breath and body heat. This required a certain psychological stability, as the feeling of being in a confined space could cause panic. But for a native, it was like being in the womb of Mother Earth, protecting her child. Like this video if you are amazed at how simple and effective ordinary leaves can be used to save lives. What if everything you've been taught about cold weather is outdated and snow can actually keep you warm? For tribes living in northern regions in the subarctic, such as the Cree or the northern Ojibwe, snow was not an enemy, but a key building material. Freshly fallen snow is 90% air, which makes it an excellent insulator. The temperature under a thick layer of snow rarely drops below 0 degrees, even when it's freezing outside. Native Americans knew this well and used it to survive. One of the simplest techniques was to use so-called snow pits at the foot of dense fir trees. The branches of the tree held the snow, creating a natural depression around the trunk, protected from the wind. All the hunter had to do was slightly expand this space and compact the walls. The result was a cozy shelter with a roof of snow-covered branches, where one could wait out the storm. If there were no trees nearby and the snow was deep enough, they dug a trench or cave. It was important to dig slowly so as not to sweat, as wet clothes in a snow hole became deadly dangerous. The entrance to such a shelter was made below floor level so that cold air would accumulate at the bottom and warm air would rise to the sleeper. This is a simple law of physics that the Indians used intuitively. A ventilation hole was always made inside the snow shelter. Without access to fresh air, a person could simply suffocate in their sleep or be poisoned by carbon dioxide. This hole was regularly checked and cleared with a stick to prevent it from being snowed over. Safety always came first, even at the expense of warmth. Over time, the walls inside the snow burrow became covered with a thin layer of ice from human breath. This crust served as additional insulation and strengthened the structure of the shelter. It was surprisingly quiet in such a house, as snow absorbs sound perfectly. This silence helped people calm down and fall into a restful sleep. To insulate from the cold, snowy floor, they used spruce branches, which they always carried with them or gathered on site. A thick layer of branches created the necessary buffer between the body and the icy surface. Without such bedding, the snow quickly melted under the body, and the person found themselves in a pool of icy water. But snow and shelter are external protection, and how do you preserve the heat that is already inside the body? In the next chapter, you will learn about life-saving poses. When there is no external source of heat, the only heater is the human body itself. The survivor's task is to preserve as much of the heat generated by the body as possible and reduce the area of heat loss. The most effective position for this is the fetal position, which all mammals instinctively assume in the cold. Native Americans pulled their knees up to their chests, wrapped their arms around them, and pressed their chins to their knees. This body position allowed them to cover the most vulnerable areas: the groin, abdomen, and chest, where the vital organs are located. It reduced the total surface area of the body in contact with the cold air. This significantly slowed down the cooling process. In addition, this position created a closed blood circulation circuit, allowing blood to return to the heart more quickly. Hands were always hidden in the warmest places, under the armpits or between the thighs. Fingers are the first candidates for frostbite, as the body first cuts off blood supply to the extremities in order to save the brain and heart. Maintaining finger mobility was critical because without it, a person became helpless. Therefore, they were kept warm at all times, never left exposed to the open air. Clothing, no matter how simple, was used wisely. If there were ties or belts, they were loosened so as not to constrict the blood vessels and disrupt blood flow. Tight clothing in the cold is a guarantee of rapid freezing. The Indians knew that it was not the fabric that kept them warm, but the layer of air beneath it, so they tried to create volume. They pulled their clothes over their heads, creating a hood or a kind of tube into which they breathed. The warm air from their breath circulated inside their clothes, warming their chest and neck. However, they had to make sure that the fabric did not become damp from condensation. It was a delicate balance that required constant monitoring. A technique of tensing and relaxing muscles without visible movement was often used. Static tension of the large muscles of the thighs, back, and abdomen generated heat without disturbing the protective posture and insulating layer of air. This allowed them to warm up from the inside without wasting energy on shivering. These seemingly simple actions were the result of centuries of observation and experience. The human body is a perfect mechanism if you know how to control it. But even the best posture won't save you if the wind blows all the heat away. Are you ready for the shocking truth? Wind kills faster than frost? The effect of the wind chill index was known to indigenous peoples in practice long before it was described by scientists. They knew that wind strips away the thin layer of warm air from the skin, forcing the body to expend enormous effort to keep warm. Without protection from the wind, any clothing or shelter became useless in a matter of minutes. Therefore, building a windbreak was a priority. In mountainous areas or on rocky plateaus, the Indians used the natural terrain. They looked for large boulders or rocky outcrops and positioned themselves on the leeward side. The rock not only blocked the wind, but also, having heated up during the day, could give off a little warmth. However, it was impossible to press close to the rock so that it would not draw heat from the body. In the forest, fallen trees were used. The huge trunk of a fallen tree is a ready-made wall that only needs a little work. The space under the trunk was filled with branches, moss, or snow to prevent the wind from blowing in from below. Branches could be leaned against the trunk at an angle to create a single-slope canopy. If there were no natural shelters, a simple woven wall was built from shrub branches. The branches were stuck into the ground or snow in a dense palisade, intertwining them with each other. The gaps were filled with grass, leaves, or snow. Such a wall was not airtight, but it broke up the wind flow, significantly reducing its speed and cooling power. It was important to correctly determine the direction of the wind, which often changed at night. Therefore, the barrier was often made not straight, but in the shape of a horseshoe or a semicircle. This protected against side gusts and created a calm zone where the air was still. In this zone, the body's heat loss was sharply reduced. Sometimes, if the snow cover allowed, a wall was built from snow blocks. The snow was cut into bricks using flat stones or sturdy sticks and laid in a semicircle. Snow is an excellent windproof material that instantly freezes in the cold, forming a monolith. Having created a quiet haven in the midst of a stormy night, it was possible to focus on the body's internal resources. In the next chapter, you will learn how the Indians controlled their internal fire. When external sources of heat are unavailable, the only hope is metabolism, the process of converting energy reserves into heat. The Indians understood the connection between food and heat. Although they did not use the concept of calories, they knew that before going to sleep in the cold, it was essential to eat if there was any food available. Food is fuel for the internal furnace, and the digestion of food itself generates heat. Fatty foods such as pemmican, a mixture of dried meat and fat, or nuts were especially valued. Fats are digested slowly and provide a long, steady flow of energy, warming the body for several hours. If there was no food, they drank warm water. If they could heat it, or simply chewed pieces of skin or bark to stimulate the stomach. The very process of chewing and swallowing slightly activated the body. Shivering is a natural protective reaction of the body, a way of generating heat through muscle contractions. However, uncontrolled shivering quickly depletes energy reserves. The Indians knew how to use so-called controlled shivering. They deliberately tensed their muscles in short bursts without exhausting themselves. An important element was the control of blood circulation through mental practices. There is evidence that some warriors were able to consciously raise the temperature of their limbs by visualizing fire or heat. This sounds mystical, but modern research confirms the possibility of the mind influencing the autonomic nervous system. They avoided alcohol even when it became available after contact with Europeans. Alcohol gives a false sense of warmth by dilating the blood vessels, but in fact contributes to a rapid loss of internal heat. Sobriety of mind and body was the key to survival. Another secret was maintaining water balance. Dehydration thickens the blood, slows its circulation, and accelerates freezing. Therefore, even in winter, it was necessary to find water by melting snow in the palms of the hands or finding unfrozen springs. Thus, balancing between sleep and wakefulness, tension and relaxation, they lived to see the dawn. The clothing of Native Americans was not just rags, but a high-tech spacesuit made from natural materials. The main principle was layering. The bottom layer, usually made of soft deer skin, fit snugly against the body and absorbed moisture. The top layer was coarser and protected against wind and precipitation. Between them was a layer of air that retained heat. Special attention was paid to footwear. Moccasins, they were soft, allowing the foot to move and work, maintaining blood circulation. Unlike stiff European boots, moccasins did not squeeze the foot. The inside of the moccasins was often stuffed with dry grass or moss, creating an additional insulating insole. Pants and leggings often had fringe. This was not just decoration, but a functional element. The fringe helped water roll off clothing faster during rain, preventing the skin from getting soaked through. In addition, it broke up the hunter's silhouette, making him less noticeable. Bison or bear skins, with the fur on the inside, were used as outerwear. The fur created thousands of air pockets that retained heat. The leather side on the outside protected against wind and snow. Such cloaks were heavy but incredibly warm. The Indians knew how to quickly dry their clothes on themselves if they got wet. To do this, they moved actively, generating heat that evaporated the moisture. The steam escaped through the pores of the skin and the holes in the clothing. It was risky, but sometimes it was the only way to keep from freezing in wet clothes. Clothes were like a second skin, an extension of the body, and were treated with appropriate respect. The night in the forest is full of sounds and movements that can frighten an unprepared person. But for an Indian, it was a book he knew how to read. They developed peripheral vision, which works better in the dark than central vision. Looking slightly to the side of an object, it was possible to notice movement even in the dim light of the stars. Their hearing was sharpened to the limit. They could distinguish the crunch of a branch under a predator's paw from the crack of a tree in the frost. The sounds of the forest told them what was happening around them, giving them time to prepare for danger or relax. Their sense of smell also played an important role. Cold air is clean, and smells travel far in it. The smell of smoke, animals, or moisture could warn them of changes in the environment long before they became visible. They did not use light so as not to reveal their presence. Darkness was their ally, hiding them from enemies and predators. Eyes accustomed to darkness could see enough to navigate and control their immediate surroundings. Their intuition, or sixth sense, was incredibly well developed. It was a subconscious reading of millions of microsignals that the brain processed and output as feelings of alarm or calm. They trusted their premonitions unconditionally. Night was not a time of fear, but a time of heightened vigilance and unity with the world of spirits and nature. Survival for Native Americans was not a struggle, it was a way of life. They did not perceive nature as a hostile force that needed to be conquered. Nature was a strict but fair mother, giving everything necessary to those who knew how to ask and take with respect. The concept of comfort, as we understand it, did not exist for them. The norm was a state of being alive, unharmed, and able to move. Everything else, warmth, fullness, a soft bed, was a pleasant bonus, but not a prerequisite. Such unpretentiousness made them incredibly resilient. They lived in the moment, here and now. There were no regrets about the past or fears about the future. There was only the task at hand, to survive this particular night, to take this particular breath. This freed them from unnecessary mental suffering. Their attitude toward nothing was philosophical. Empty hands are not poverty, they are freedom. If you have knowledge and spirit, you own the whole world. The forest is a warehouse of materials, a pharmacy, and a grocery store open to those who know what to look for. Respect for the forces of nature was the basis of their worldview. They thanked the spirit of the wind for calming down and the spirit of the tree for sheltering them. This gratitude created a psychological attitude of cooperation with the world, not conflict. Each night survived made a warrior stronger and wiser. It was an experience that tempered character and body. They were proud of their ability to survive where others perished, but they did not boast about it. The history of Native American survival is a textbook of adaptation and resilience written by life itself. Their methods, based on a deep knowledge of physics, biology, and psychology, prove that human capabilities are much broader than we are accustomed to thinking. Empty hands do not mean helplessness if they are guided by a clear mind and a strong spirit. Even in the most extreme conditions, a person is capable of creating an island of safety for themselves, using only what lies beneath their feet. Which of the survival techniques described above did you find most surprising or useful? Could you apply the thermal cocoon or snow shelter techniques in real life? Share your opinion in the comments. It is very important for us to know what you think. And of course, subscribe to our channel to discover new pages of history and learn wisdom from those who lived on this earth long before us.